Chapter 1, Pearl, please tell my father and mother, the king and queen, that I accept the marriage arrangement. I will return to the nameless sea on my birthday next month. Princess, you've finally come to your senses. Not to mention, Ethan Sterling is a mere mortal, utterly unworthy of our noble mermaid princess, and think of your heartfelt confession 5 years ago who wouldn't have been moved. Yet he avoided you like the plague, fleeing to the borderlands as if escaping a famine. A lavishly decorated yacht drifted closer in the distance. Melodia Azure waved her hand dismissively. Pearl immediately fell silent, transformed back into her mermaid form, and slipped into the water. Ripples spread across the surface. Melodia lifted her gaze and saw the approaching yacht was laden with a magnificent dowry. The yacht had been a birthday gift from Ethan Sterling 5 years ago. It was said that he had personally designed it, spending 3 years searching for materials and another 2 years hiring dozens of the finest shipwrights from the southern coast to meticulously craft it. Who wouldn't see such dedication and assume he was deeply in love? She had thought so, too. After all, everyone in the capital knew she was just an orphan the young Marquis Sterling had picked up off the street, his sister in name only. But on that very day, everything changed. When she stood amidst a shower of petals and offered her whole heart to Ethan, asking if he would marry her, he had been so shocked that he leaped off the yacht and swam back to shore without a second glance. After that, he avoided her for days. The next time Melodia heard news of Ethan, he was already clad in armor and heading for the frontier. He was gone for 5 years. Melodia sent letter after tear-stained letter, but never received a single word in reply. The man who once beamed with joy at 2 simple words from her, promising to have them framed, the man who would write her entire stories on a whim if she said she was bored, now wouldn't spare her a single character. The cold shoulder came so swiftly. Melodia even began to suspect that Ethan preferred men. But a month ago, Ethan returned to the capital, and with him was a delicate, frail-looking young woman. She watched as all the affection that was once hers was showered upon that woman. Only then did she realize that Ethan didn't dislike women, he just didn't love her. All the past kindness and pampering had been nothing more than a whim of the young Marquis, like keeping a small pet. She had been the one to overstep. She had foolishly mistaken his actions for proof of his love, always thinking that if she just tried a little harder, was a little more forward, they could spend their lives together. Even after Ethan brought Livia Willow back, a sliver of fantasy remained in her heart. She imagined that Ethan was only looking after Livia, the orphan of his deceased vice-general, out of a sense of duty. Until a few days ago, Ethan used his military achievements to request a marriage decree from the emperor. A marriage decree for him and Livia. Upon learning this, Melodia sought out Ethan, demanding an explanation. But she searched all over the capital, only to learn from a maid in Livia's courtyard that he had taken Livia to see the flowers at Sunset Cliff. The peach blossoms at Sunset Cliff were legendary. She had begged Ethan countless times to go with her. But Ethan always had an excuse, never forgetting to remind her each time that peach blossoms were meant to be viewed with one's husband. He had refused her so firmly. Yet he went with Livia Willow to see the peach blossoms. Clutching her aching heart, Melodia had never been so soberly aware that he truly had never loved her. But how could a love nurtured for a decade be extinguished so easily? She refused to give up. She hiked up her skirts and ran to Sunset Cliff. As dusk fell, Melodia finally reached the summit. Her clothes were disheveled, her shoes caked with mud, she was a complete mess. And there, under the setting sun, beneath a peach tree symbolizing marriage, Ethan held Livia Willow in his arms as if she were a precious jewel, so gently that he seemed afraid to break her, softly brushing away a peach petal that had fallen on her cheek. The scene froze Melodia in place. Even though she had long known Ethan didn't love her, her heart still seized with a pain so sharp she could barely breathe. Just then, a mountain shower began to fall. Ethan carefully helped Livia into the carriage. The carriage passed right by Melodia. The wind blew, lifting the curtain of the carriage window. Livia saw her and reminded him with a feigned pout. Your sister Melodia is here. Does she have an appointment with someone? Hearing this, Melodia couldn't stop a foolish hope from rising within her. She hoped Ethan would, as he had in the past, gently lift her into the carriage, his heart aching for her disheveled and frantic state. But a foolish hope was just that. Ethan didn't even spare her a glance. The curtain fell. Melodia heard Ethan's indifferent voice drift out. "This is not a place you should be. Since you have no memory, stay here and reflect. You can return to the Sterling Manor when you've gotten rid of those improper thoughts." The carriage sped away. It didn't stop for her for even a moment, just like Ethan's love. Melodia stood motionless, watching the carriage disappear into the distance. The rain fell in a steady downpour. She was soaked to the bone, and an indescribable pain began to radiate through her entire body. A moment later, she collapsed to the ground, trembling uncontrollably. But this time, there was no one left to shield her with an umbrella. This was the price she had to pay to live on land as a mermaid. She could not touch rainwater. Even a single drop could cause her agonizing pain. Ethan knew she was afraid of the rain. In the past, he would stay by her side on rainy days, never leaving. If she cried out in pain, he would rush to the palace overnight and bring the royal physician back to the manor to treat her. But now he was tenderly caring for another woman, while abandoning her on a clifftop at nightfall, leaving her to be engulfed by the storm. Melodia curled up in the rain. Drop after drop fell on her. It felt like being sliced by 1,000 knives. At the same time, it carved away her love for Ethan, piece by piece. She had loved for 10 years. She had forced the issue for 5. This was all she had to show for it. 6 months ago, her father and mother sent a messenger to tell her they had arranged a marriage for her. She had been angry at them for meddling, insisting on staying at the Sterling Manor. But now, she was truly tired. Ethan didn't love her. Her staying in the human world for love had become a joke. The last rays of the setting sun faded. Melodia fainted from the pain, only one thought remaining in her mind. It was time to go home. Back to the nameless sea, a place humans could never find. Chapter 2, she was unconscious for 3 days. Melodia felt muddled, her body alternating between hot and cold. One moment, she dreamed of the old memory of Ethan saving her from ruffians 10 years ago. The next, she dreamed of the terrifying image of Ethan chopping off her mermaid tail. She woke with a start. She found herself in a farmer's house on the outskirts of the capital. She learned that the weather had cleared the day before, and an old woman had gone into the mountains to gather ginseng. The woman found her unconscious, brought her back to her home, and fed her the precious ginseng she had just collected, pulling her back from the brink of death. Melodia gave all the gold and jewels she had on her to the woman. The woman said her ginseng wasn't worth that much, but Melodia insisted, so the woman had to accept, calling her a living saint with tears of joy. Melodia smiled without saying anything. The gold and jewels of the human world were useless to a mermaid. It was fitting that they should end up in the hands of such a kind-hearted woman. Melodia bid farewell to the old woman. She headed straight for the Grand Canal. The canal not only passed through the southern provinces, but also had a hidden channel that led directly to the nameless sea. Pearl, who couldn't fully transform into a human, used this waterway to deliver messages to her in the capital. Now, with Melodia's reply, she was rushing back to the nameless sea to deliver the good news without a moment's delay. The yacht drew closer. Melodia's thoughts returned to the present. Ever since her confession was rejected 5 years ago and Ethan had fled to the frontier, the yacht had been mothballed, never to touch water again. Now, it once again floated on the water's surface, but it no longer carried Ethan's special affection for her. Instead, it carried the magnificent dowry Ethan had prepared for Livia Willow. The birthday gift he had poured his heart into, the yacht he had fled from because of her confession. Now, he could bring it out so easily just to please another woman. Melodia had thought she would be heartbroken. However, when the yacht carrying the dowry actually stopped before her, her heart only gave a slight twinge. Noticeable, but not intense. The yacht docked. A man with a face as handsome as jade, dressed in a casual blue robe, stepped out of the cabin. Seeing Melodia on the shore, he froze for a moment before his eyes darkened in admonishment. "You've been running wild for 3 days. How much longer are you going to cause trouble? You are right to scold me, big brother." Melodia lowered her eyes, not arguing or defending herself. It had rained for 2 days. She had lain on Sunset Cliff for 2 days. If Ethan had even an ounce of care for her in his heart, he would have sent someone to check on her and would have known her situation. But he hadn't. Not an ounce. Melodia had walked through death's door. Seeing Ethan again now, she suddenly realized that the man she had loved with all her heart for 10 years was nothing special after all. The distant form of a dress made the man's brow furrow tightly. "What did you call me?" "Big brother." Melodia looked up, her gaze steady. "I was presumptuous in the past, but I've thought it through now. Since I am the adopted daughter of the Sterling family, it is only natural that I address you respectfully as Big Brother." Her eyes were as calm as still water, as if she were looking at someone completely insignificant. Ethan's heart tightened, and he subconsciously grabbed Melodia's wrist. "Say that again? Rest assured, Big Brother, I have put away all improper thoughts. So, Ethan, you don't need to keep testing me." Melodia's gaze went past him to the dowry behind him, and she continued in a gentle voice. "Your wedding to my future sister-in-law is approaching. I wish you both 100 years of happiness, and may you have a son soon. From now on, our paths will diverge. I'm letting you go, and I'm letting myself go," Melodia said in her heart. Then she gently brushed Ethan's hand away and turned to leave. The warmth from her fingertips faded quickly. Ethan's breath hitched. He felt as if something important was about to slip from his grasp and took a step as if to chase after her. Livia Willow walked out of the cabin. "Eth, is Melodia still angry about us leaving her at Sunset Cliff that day?" Ethan's expression tightened. Livia then covered her mouth and coughed lightly. "It's all my fault for being so frail and unable to stand the cold. If I had known earlier that Melodia was afraid of the rain, I would never have let you leave her behind." "It's not your fault." Ethan quickly went to her side and helped soothe her breathing. Watching Melodia's retreating back, his eyes flickered, as if some emotion was about to break through. But he did nothing. After a long moment, he suppressed the turmoil in his eyes and said through gritted teeth, "She's not an idiot. Doesn't she know to find shelter when it rains?" His tone was anxious and unsettled. It was hard to tell if he was comforting Livia or himself. Melodia heard him clearly, but she only pressed a hand to her heart. It's okay. From now on, she would never have to hide from the rain again. Chapter 3, returning to the Sterling Manor, Melodia immediately rushed to the back garden. A jujube tree grew in the garden. She had begged Ethan to plant it for her on the day she arrived at the manor 10 years ago. At the time, she had no feelings for human flowers or trees. She had just heard that on their wedding day, humans would place things like peanuts, jujubes, and longans on the marriage bed for good luck. So she pestered Ethan into planting this jujube tree. Secretly, she only hoped that one day, the fruit from this tree could be scattered on their marriage bed. She had spent 10 years carefully tending to it. Now, the jujube tree was laden with fruit. But she and Ethan were no longer possible. Still, since she had planted it herself, she didn't want its fruit to appear on Ethan and Livia's marriage bed. It would disgust them, and it would disgust her. Melodia called for the servants to help. The tall jujube tree quickly fell to the ground with the combined effort of several people. Just like her love for Ethan. It had seemed indestructible, but when it was time to let go, it wasn't as difficult as she had imagined. Jujubes rolled all over the ground. Melodia told the servants to take the fruit and eat it, then to chop the tree into firewood for the kitchen. Then she turned to clearing out the flowers. Ethan loved flowers. Over the past 5 years, every time she thought of him, she would plant one of his favorite flowers in the garden. Now, the garden was filled with fragrant blossoms. Unfortunately, the fragrant flowers had become a bitter joke. Melodia pulled out the flowers she had planted, one by one. Along with every thought of him over the past 5 years, she put them all to the torch. The flames lit up half the sky over the manor. Ethan rushed over, his steps hurried. "Melody, why did you have the jujube tree cut down?" "It's nothing." Melodia dusted the dirt from her hands. "I just got tired of the jujube tree and wanted to plant something else." Ethan breathed a sigh of relief. He was about to ask what she wanted to plant when, in the firelight, he noticed that the entire garden was half empty, with most of the flowers gone. His face darkened, and a sense of unease grew in his heart. But Melodia just looked calmly at Livia, who had followed him. "Sister-in-law, the garden is empty now. You can plant whatever flowers you like in the future." "This?" Livia looked frightened and uneasy. "Sister, did you hear some rumors in the manor? Are you angry at me for being inconsiderate?" Ethan frowned. "What rumors?" Livia stammered, refusing to say. Ethan looked back at Melodia. However, Melodia just stared at the leaping flames and smiled faintly. "I don't know what sister-in-law is talking about. I simply feel that managing the garden is too much trouble and I've grown tired of it. I thought I'd clear the space to hand it over to the future mistress of the manor to manage. There were indeed rumors. Some said the future lady of the manor was about to arrive, and she was still being shameless, trying to use these flowers to seduce Ethan. Some said her lowly birth meant she was only fit to tend to flowers here, and others said the flowers she planted were deliberately taking up the space where the future lady of the manor wanted to plant her own. They spread these stories simply because when Livia returned to the capital with Ethan, she brought 3 carriages full of carefully cultivated flowers. After entering the manor, she refused to transplant them into the ground, keeping them delicately in their pots. But clearly, she had come to this manor first, and she had planted the flowers first. Yet everyone felt she was the usurper, deliberately leaving no place for Livia's flowers. She didn't understand before. Naturally, she was indignant and had indeed found excuses to cause trouble in Livia's courtyard a couple of times. Now she understood. The manor, the flowers, they were all like Ethan's love. Who came first didn't matter at all. It all depended on who he was willing to give them to. But it didn't matter anymore. Anyway, the manor, the flowers, and Ethan's love, she didn't want any of them. Melodia was unusually obedient and sensible. Ethan, on the other hand, was not used to it. Melody, stop this nonsense. It's true that Livia is the future mistress of the manor, but you are also a master of this house. They're just a few flowers, plant them if you want. Why get angry with Livia over this? Nonsense again. Angry again, Melodia took a deep breath. Her thoughts drifted away uncontrollably. Once, she didn't understand the value of porcelain and calligraphy. She saw Ethan on a lake tour with a young lady from a noble family and, in a fit of anger, destroyed half the manor's storeroom. The old marquis was furious, but Ethan insisted on protecting her. For that, he endured 100 lashes from his grandfather. There was barely a patch of good skin on his back, and he lay in bed, barely breathing. Seeing her crying and blaming herself, he still smiled and patted her head, saying, "With me, Melody can always be willful and throw tantrums. Get angry with whoever you want, I'll protect you." He was the one who said she could be willful. Now he was the one telling her not to cause trouble. He was the one who said he would protect her. Now he was protecting another woman and accusing her of being angry. Look, this is the human heart. Melodia looked at Ethan again. There were no more ripples in her eyes. You're right, big brother, they're just a few flowers. I can plant them if I want, and I can pull them out if I want. Why would I get angry with sister-in-law over them? Just by adding a few words, she left Ethan speechless. He didn't like this indifferent attitude of hers. Seeing that she was about to leave, he subconsciously called out, "Plant them back." "What?" Melodia almost laughed. "Haven't you heard the saying, big brother? It's called, spilt water can't be gathered up." Spilt water can't be gathered up? Ethan felt a strange panic. Was she talking about the burnt flowers or them? At that moment, the fire died down. Looking at the ashes that were once a garden of fragrant flowers, he muttered to himself, "It's good that they're burned. Out with the old, in with the new." Melodia lowered her eyes. She suppressed the twinge of pain in her heart. What a fine, out with the old, in with the new. But why the reminder? She, the old one, along with her old things, would disappear from the human world. Don't be impatient. Ethan. Chapter 4. Ethan got busy again. He only returned to the manor once every 3 or 5 days, and even then, he rarely saw Melodia. This was convenient for her. She had been at the manor for 10 years. For the first 5 years, Ethan had meticulously arranged her food, clothing, and expenses. There was a lot to deal with. For the last 5 years, Ethan was at the frontier and ignored her. The manor didn't cut her off, but her thoughts were always on Ethan, so she kept using the old things. Now, things were much easier. They were just worldly possessions. What could be burned was burned. What couldn't be burned was pawned off to foreign merchants. What couldn't be burned or sold was dismantled and thrown off Sunset Cliff. But dealing with the things in her own courtyard was easy. The difficult part was the things in Ethan's courtyard. The things he collected that were related to her, the gifts she gave him, the little trinkets they bought together at the market, all in all, there were quite a few. Most important were the letters she had written every 3 days for 5 years, each word from her heart, without interruption. Ethan was not at the manor. Melodia thought of sneaking into his courtyard to steal the items and destroy them. Unfortunately, his special favor was now given to Livia. The person the shadow guards never stopped was no longer her, but Livia. Melodia was denied entry. The next day, Ethan returned. He even sent someone to inform her that he would be coming for dinner. Since he had fled in panic 5 years ago, this was the first time he had said he would dine with her. In the past, Melodia would have been so happy she would have cooked herself. Now, she only felt he was coming to confront her. She wanted to refuse, but then she remembered that his sword still had the tassel she had given him, and a jade pendant she had gifted him still hung at his waist. The sword tassel was the first thing she had ever made by hand. The jade pendant was his 18th birthday present. Melodia turned and had a maid bring several jars of fine wine. As soon as Ethan entered the door, he noticed the changes in the courtyard. He called over a maid. "Why is the swing gone? And the wooden horse here, and the altar over there, why are they all missing?" Miss said she's tired of the old scenery and wants to redecorate the courtyard, so she cleared out a lot of old things. Not just the courtyard, she's cleared out a lot from the house too. The maid repeated Melodia's excuse. Ethan felt something was wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on what it was. After all, almost everything in her courtyard was from 5 years ago. At her age, it was perfectly normal to want new things. He entered the house with a sense of unease. The food was already on the table. The wine was warmed. Melodia sat at the table, smiling and greeting him. "Come, sit down." Her affectionate attitude had a shadow of her former self. The unease in Ethan's heart dissipated a little. He sat down. Before he could speak, Melodia eagerly poured him a glass of wine. Drunkenness leads to mistakes. He was about to push it away, but Melodia's eyes drooped in disappointment. "I thought that if we couldn't be husband and wife, we could at least be brother and sister, and share a drink and conversation. But now it seems, even that has become a luxury." Ethan's heart trembled. He lowered his eyes, drained the glass in one gulp and said, "Livia is waiting for me. I can only have a few drinks with you." "All right." Melodia's tears turned to smiles. She raised her hand and poured him another glass. She didn't argue or make a scene. Ethan breathed a sigh of relief, but couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. In the past, when they were together, Melodia was always chattering, and he loved sharing everything with her. Now, at this rare reunion, they sat in silence, not knowing what to say. He said he'd only have a few drinks. But with nothing to say, what else could they do but drink? Another glass went down. Melodia propped up her chin and called out in a soft voice, "Eth." Ethan's gaze turned cold. "Melody, you're drunk." "I'm not drunk." Melodia stood up unsteadily, her hands on his table. "You've been wearing that sword tassel and jade pendant for so many years. It's time for a new one." "No need." Ethan glanced at the jade pendant at his waist. An inexplicable annoyance rose in his heart. "No," Melodia said, brooking no argument, and threw herself at Ethan. "Melody." Ethan jumped up from his seat in alarm, as if her touch would kill him. "Stop fooling around." Melodia looked at him with a hurt expression. 5 parts acting, 5 parts genuine. She knew he didn't love her, but she didn't know he was so repulsed by her touch. Ethan met the hurt in her eyes and immediately looked away. He then took off the jade pendant and sword tassel and slapped them on the table. "Since you want new ones, take them. I'm going to see Livia. You be good and go to sleep, you hear?" "Yes, big brother." Melodia gave a clumsy salute. Ethan pressed his lips together and left quickly with a dark face. As soon as he left, Melodia's drunken act vanished. She was a mermaid. How could she possibly get drunk? In the past, she had only pretended to be drunk to get closer to him. Today was the last time she would feign drunkenness, but it was no longer to confess her true feelings to him. It was to erase her traces from him. From now on, from now on. Chapter 5. Melodia slept soundly through the night. She had rarely slept so well since Ethan left for the frontier. For this, she had sought out many doctors. They always said it was a sickness of the heart, with no cure. She never thought the treatment would be so simple. All it took was letting go of her obsession with Ethan to be cured. Fortunately, her awakening didn't come too late. From now on, she would sleep peacefully every night. How wonderful, Melodia thought to herself. She rolled over, wanting to sleep a little longer. But a maid came to report that the old Madame, Elinor Sterling, had summoned her to the front hall. Ethan's mother had passed away early. The old Marquis was a devoted man and had kept his promise of a lifetime with one wife. Ethan was practically raised by his grandmother, the matriarch. The matriarch looked down on Melodia. She didn't say much in front of Ethan, but behind his back, she often reminded her not to have any foolish ambitions. In the 5 years Ethan was away, the matriarch became even more severe. Her punishments escalated from simply copying precepts for women to kneeling in the ancestral hall and enduring the family's code of punishment. In the past, Melodia tolerated it all, knowing she was Ethan's grandmother. She even foolishly tried to change the old madam's opinion of her by being subservient and trying to please her. The mermaid princess who had never touched housework. In just 5 years, she could manage all the chores of the manor. Thinking back now, she was truly foolish. Facing someone who didn't cherish you, being humble and trying to please them was just giving them an opportunity to manipulate you at will. It was true for Ethan, and even more so for the old madam. However, speaking of the old madam, Melodia remembered that she still had many scriptures she had copied and embroideries she had made at her place. 10 years in the human world was a long time. So long that when she looked back, she was surprised to find that she had come alone, yet had unknowingly left so many traces behind. Cleaning it all up was a bit of a hassle, but she had come clean, and she wanted to leave clean. Since Ethan disliked her so much, she didn't want to leave anything behind to be an eyesore for him. Consider it repayment for his kindness in the first 5 years. Melodia got up and washed. The maid was still waiting outside. She was clearly used to Melodia rushing over whenever the old madam summoned her. But today, she was destined to be disappointed. After washing up, Melodia sat down calmly at her vanity to do her hair. The maid grew impatient and urged her. She immediately had the maid thrown out of the courtyard and told her to inform the old madam that she would pay her respects after breakfast. The maid left in disbelief. Soon, the rough servants from the old madam's courtyard arrived. They intended to grab Melodia and drag her over. Melodia instinctively resisted. Normally, with her abilities, she could have easily taken down a few servants. But the 2 days of rain at Sunset Cliff had severely drained her body. At this moment, she was weaker than even Livia Willow, who constantly complained of feeling unwell. Melodia was dragged before the old madam. She was a complete mess. A servant kicked the back of her knees. She couldn't stand it and fell to the floor with a thud, kneeling in the hall. "Melodia, do you know your mistake?" The old madam's stern voice came. "I do not." Melodia looked up and saw that Ethan and Livia were also there. Any further arguments died in her throat. However, Ethan was looking at a Buddhist painting in Livia's hands. His gaze was gentle, his expression focused. It was as if he hadn't noticed the old madam's deliberate provocation or the servant's rough treatment at all. But in the past, when the old madam had made her perform a kneeling bow, he would have caused a scene in the manor. If any servant accidentally bumped into her, he would make an example of them without mercy. He had held her so carefully. But why had everything changed? Melodia looked at the oblivious Ethan. For the first time, she felt what a terrible mistake it had been to fall in love with this man and offer him her heart. Her eyes grew cold. Her heart grew cold. Melodia lowered her gaze, no longer looking at Ethan. The old madam continued her cold reprimand. "You live under our roof, yet you show no respect for your elders. If you are not taught a lesson, you will surely become a disaster in the future. Men, bring out the ultimate family discipline." The ultimate family discipline was 100 lashes. Ethan subconsciously looked up at Melodia, as if expecting her to beg for mercy, but Melodia remained silent. It was just the family discipline. She had endured it many times in the past 5 years. The old madam blamed her for driving Ethan away. Whenever she heard that Ethan was injured, she would find an excuse to use the family discipline. Melodia knew this well, but at the time, she didn't care. Mermaids had long lifespans, and their bodies recovered far faster than humans. Except for being caught in the rain, almost no wound could stay on her body for more than 3 days. She had considered the pain as sharing the suffering of the injured Ethan. As for now, Ethan had once taken 100 lashes from the old marquis for her. After she took this, her debt would be cleared. Melodia refused to speak. Ethan also turned his head away. The steward held the whip, lashing Melodia's body again and again without any leniency. The inner hall was silent. Only the sound of the whip and Melodia's pained gasps could be heard. Her dress was torn by the whip. Blood seeped out, staining her back red. Melodia's brows were tightly furrowed, her body so weak she was on the verge of fainting, yet she didn't make a sound. In a daze, she heard Ethan's voice. "Melody, when you're wrong, you must admit it." "Wrong?" Melodia smiled. She was indeed wrong. Her biggest mistake was falling in love with Ethan. Her biggest mistake was coming to the human world for Ethan. Melodia's smile made Ethan inexplicably anxious. In the past, she would cry and need him to comfort her over a paper cut. Now, after dozens of lashes, she wouldn't even say a single soft word. When did she become like this? Ethan subconsciously turned his gaze. Grandmother, Livia, as if just noticing Melodia's punishment, interjected at the right moment. "Grandmother, Melodia is young. If she doesn't know the rules, we can just teach her again. Isn't the ultimate discipline a bit too severe? How about this? I see that her embroidery is excellent. My wedding veil isn't ready yet. Why don't we let her make up for her mistake this way?" Chapter 6. What a way to make amends. Melodia wanted to laugh out loud, but the pain of her torn flesh was so intense that she couldn't focus, barely able to stay conscious. The old madam couldn't stand Melodia's half-smiling expression. Her wrinkled face trembled. "Livia is kind enough to save you. What do you mean by making that face? How has Ethan treated you? How has Livia treated you? And how has this manor treated you? You won't even embroider a wedding veil?" Melodia trembled. "I will embroider the veil." Ethan's sharp gaze immediately fell on the steward. The steward's whip, already in motion, couldn't be stopped and struck Melodia again, making her gasp. "My apologies, young Marquis." The steward quickly admitted his mistake. "Get out," Ethan said coldly. But before he could finish, Melodia spoke up. "Continue." Ethan's eyes widened. Livia looked at Ethan, then lowered her eyes and wiped away a tear. "Sister, are you angry that I'm making you do a seamstress's work? I just couldn't bear to see you suffer physically. I saw your excellent embroidery and wanted to ask for your blessing. If you're unwilling—" "Sister-in-law," Melodia interrupted, gasping for breath, "I am willing." Ethan snorted coldly. "If you're not targeting Livia, why won't you yield?" "Why won't I yield? What a question. If she yielded now, would anyone's heart ache for her? Since no one's heart would ache, why bother yielding?" Melodia managed a slight smile and reminded him in a trembling voice. "Have you forgotten, big brother? Article 21 of the Sterling Family Code. Once the ultimate discipline has begun, it cannot be stopped except by death." Ethan froze. The Sterling Family Code? She used to despise these things. How did she remember them more clearly than he did now? "Stop," he shouted, feeling frustrated and suffocated. "Ethan," the old madam snapped, then turned to the steward. "There are 43 lashes left. Continue." "Grandmother," Ethan clenched his fists tightly. "My wedding with Livia is only a month away. If you give her 100 lashes, will the wedding veil be ready in time?" It was for the wedding veil. A pang of pain shot through Melodia's heart. Did Ethan love Livia that much? For Livia's wish, he was willing to defy the Sterling Family Code. Seeing the old madam hesitate, she immediately retorted, "Are you going to defy the family's traditions, big brother?" Ethan gritted his teeth. Melodia, he rarely called her by her full name. When he did, it meant he was on the verge of rage. Livia quickly knelt at the old madam's feet. "It's all my fault for not understanding the Sterling Family Code and making such an unreasonable request. If you must punish someone, punish me. It's not your fault." Ethan's tone softened instantly. He bent down to help Livia up. When he looked at Melodia again, his face was terrifyingly dark. "Since you insist on degrading yourself, then so be it." With that, he flicked his sleeves and walked away. But as he passed by Melodia, he heard her murmur, "Ethan Sterling, I don't owe you any more." "What did you say?" Ethan stopped. He looked down and saw her blood-soaked back, his pupils constricting. Melodia raised her pale face and gave him a faint smile. "Is there anything left for us to say to each other?" Ethan was choked with anger. "You brought this upon yourself." He strode away. Livia quickly followed. Before leaving, she didn't forget to remind Melodia, "I'm looking forward to the wedding veil, sister." Melodia saw the mockery in Livia's eyes. A hint of ridicule appeared on her pale face as well. "Look forward to it all you want." She wouldn't be around for their wedding day anyway. The lashes continued to fall. Blood dripped from her torn clothes onto the floor, like blooming flowers. Looking at the blood flowers on the ground, Melodia felt dizzy. Fortunately, the intense, continuous pain kept her from fainting on the spot. The old madam grew tired of watching and got up to leave. Melodia quickly looked up and called out, "Old madam." Her voice was as thin as a thread, but it came during a pause between lashes, and the old madam heard it clearly. The old madam's gaze, as cold as ice, pierced her. "What did you call me?" "Grandmother." Melodia obediently corrected herself. "Speak." The old madam raised her hand, temporarily stopping the steward's whip. Melodia took a deep breath to make her voice as clear and strong as possible. "Since I am to embroider the wedding veil, I would like to ask grandmother for something. I hope grandmother will grant my request." The old madam frowned. "Do you think you have the right to bargain?" "Rest assured, grandmother." Melodia smiled faintly. "This item is of no importance to the Sterling Manor. I only wish to use it for a blessing and will not harm anyone." "A blessing?" The old madam, who believed in such things, immediately relented. "Speak, what do you want?" Melodia didn't hesitate. "The items are the scriptures I copied and the Buddhist images I embroidered in the past." Seeing the old madam's confusion, she quickly explained. "Since it's for a blessing, if I use scriptures and embroideries made by others, I fear the heavens will think me insincere. But the wedding is approaching, the veil is needed urgently, and I am injured. I simply don't have the time to copy and embroider them again. If there is no blessing," Melodia didn't finish her sentence, but for the old madam, it was enough. The old madam waved to the attendant beside her. "Go and do it," she then left. The attendant went to carry out the order. The steward's whip fell again. With no outsiders present, Melodia no longer needed to put on a brave face. She spat out a mouthful of blood. Before fainting, a smile spread across her face. How wonderful. Another one of her traces in the human world was gone. Chapter 7, Melodia was unconscious for another 2 days. Only this time, she didn't dream of Ethan Sterling. Her back had been treated with medicine, but she didn't care. Once she returned to the nameless sea, these scars would disappear without a trace anyway. Fortunately, the old madam kept her word. 2 chests full of items were delivered, neatly arranged. Even Melodia herself was a little surprised to see them. She hadn't realized that after all these years of sending them bit by bit, she had accumulated so much. She had the servants move the chests into the courtyard, and, using the old madam's name as an excuse, ordered them to fetch the precepts for women and family rules she had copied from the Sterling Ancestral Hall. Soon, the items were brought over. Melodia, under the pretext that the blessing ritual could not be watched or interrupted, dismissed everyone. Then, she threw a torch on top of them. The flames soared into the sky, but no one came to investigate. After all, it was the Emperor's birthday today, and the masters of the Sterling Manor had all gone to the palace for the banquet. It truly was a good day. Melodia thought to herself, then turned and went to Ethan's courtyard. The shadow guard appeared again to block her way, but Melodia had already prepared her excuse. "My sister-in-law asked me to embroider the wedding veil, but I don't have time to draw a pattern. My old drawings are all with my brother. I want to get them for reference. If you delay me because of your obstruction, I won't take responsibility for it. I will go and ask for instructions immediately." The shadow guard claws beat his fists. "Go ahead," Melodia reminded him. "But my brother is at the palace banquet and won't be back for 3 days. If the work is delayed, you can explain it to my brother and sister-in-law yourself." Ethan had been on the frontier for 5 years. He had earned the title of the cold-faced god of war. Melodia, of course, was not afraid, but the subordinates who followed him knew very well what he was like when he got angry. The shadow guard hesitated. "Just to get a drawing?" Melodia showed her displeasure. "What else? Is the Sterling Manor short of anything? Would I steal from the manor?" That was true. In the past, Melodia could come and go from this courtyard freely and never caused any trouble. Today, she was just getting a pattern, so it probably wouldn't cause any problems. The shadow guard couldn't find any fault and had to let her pass. Melodia went straight to the study. Ethan didn't like to have decorations in his bedroom, so most of the things were in the study. She had thought she would find them easily. Unexpectedly, Ethan had only been back for a month, and the study had changed completely. As far as she could see, she couldn't find anything that belonged to her. Melodia had to go to the bedroom to look. But the bedroom was still the same, with its cold and empty appearance. Only the 2 portraits of her that used to hang there had been taken down. Melodia searched again. The entire courtyard had only 5 rooms. She finally found 5 chests in a pile of broken tables and chairs in an old storeroom in the corner of the courtyard. She opened one to look. It was filled with all the mementos of her past with Ethan. It didn't take a genius to figure out that Ethan must have put them away, afraid that Livia would see them and be hurt. Now, it saved her the trouble. Good. Melodia looked through the chests one by one. Except for 2 swords that couldn't be burned, everything else could be destroyed with a single fire. But speaking of the swords, she did have a bit of a headache. To ensure Ethan would be satisfied with them, she had specially sought out 1,000-year-old enchanted steel to forge them. So both swords could cut through iron like mud and were impervious to fire and blades. Originally, they could have fetched a good price. But in a moment of passion, she had molded the characters, Ethan Sterling, onto the blades when they were forged. She couldn't get rid of them, so she could only take them with her. Melodia took out a tinderbox and set fire to the chests and the old storeroom. Then she messed up her hair, smudged her face with soot, and ran out to find the shadow guard like a refugee. "It's bad. The old storeroom is on fire. I'm going to find people to put it out. You go to the palace quickly and report to my brother." The shadow guard was not without suspicion. But seeing Melodia's disheveled appearance and the black smoke rising from the old storeroom, he ultimately chose to believe her and left quickly to report. Melodia returned to the entrance of the old storeroom. She watched until the chests were completely burned before shouting, "Fire!" Originally, when Melodia was performing a blessing in her own courtyard, the manor servants saw the black smoke and didn't think much of it. But when they heard that Ethan's courtyard was on fire, they all rushed over to help put it out. With so many people around, it was chaotic. Melodia quietly took the swords out of the manor and threw them into the Grand Canal that night. She had the mermaid who had taken Pearl's place follow the canal down to the sea to deliver the swords. Of course, just to a regular sea. After all, objects from the human world could not enter the nameless sea. In the years to come, she didn't want to see anything related to Ethan Sterling again. Not long after she returned to the manor, Ethan burst into her courtyard in a panic. "Melodia, is something wrong, big brother?" Melodia walked out, her expression unchanged. Ethan rushed up to her. Melodia immediately offered an explanation. "The fire was my fault. I accidentally dropped a tinderbox while I was looking for something. But it was an old storeroom, so there probably wasn't anything important in it, right? I got out quickly and wasn't hurt." It was just a casual reassurance. She didn't expect Ethan to care. But unexpectedly, Ethan strode forward and grabbed her, pulling her along. "Livia was burned by the fire trying to save your things. Isn't your blood known for its miraculous healing properties? Come with me and save Livia." Chapter 8. Ethan walked quickly, not realizing he was gripping Melodia's wrist so tightly it hurt. Melodia looked at the man before her with cold eyes. She said she had let go, but a pang of pain still rose in her heart. Ethan had always known her blood was special, that her wounds healed faster than a normal person's. But in the past, he still couldn't bear to see her get even a little hurt, saying that no matter how fast she healed, it still hurt when she was injured. He said he couldn't bear to see her in pain, so he would never let anyone know her blood had this miraculous effect. And now, he was making her bleed to treat another woman's burns. It wasn't even a life-threatening injury. Did he care for Livia Willow that much? Melodia followed Ethan into Livia's room step by step. Livia was half lying on the bed. As soon as she saw Ethan, her eyes reddened. "Ethan, our wedding is so close, but my face is like this. Will you despise me?" Ethan rushed forward to comfort her. "Livia, you were hurt for me. Don't worry, I have a way to heal you. Melody's blood can make wounds heal quickly. You won't have any scars." Melodia followed him forward. She glanced at Livia's face. The burn was no whiter than a candle flame. Besides, when she left the manor, the fire in the old warehouse had already been mostly extinguished. At that time, Livia and Ethan were still in the palace. Given Livia's status, she couldn't have left the palace before Ethan. She must have left with him and found another opportunity to burn herself. Ethan was blind, but she wasn't. Livia met Melodia's probing gaze. A faint smile flickered across her lips, and she turned and threw herself into Ethan's arms. "Ethan, what nonsense are you talking? How can you let Melodia get hurt because of me? It doesn't matter, she'll heal quickly. But your face absolutely cannot be scarred by this." Ethan's words were like daggers to the heart. But with only 3 days left, Melodia didn't want to argue about everything. She ignored Livia's hidden provocation and simply reminded Ethan. My blood, she can't use it. I'm just taking a little of your blood, not your life. Why are you being so petty? Ethan frowned. Melody, don't forget why Livia was hurt if it wasn't for your carelessness causing the fire. I said, she can't use my blood, Melodia warned again. Ethan's anger erupted. Melodia, stop being so willful, Melodia laughed, speechless. Her blood could indeed accelerate wound healing, but it was only effective on mermaids and dragons. If used on humans, it would appear to heal on the surface, but would actually cause the flesh to rot from the inside out. A small wound like Livia's, if she dared to use her blood, her face would probably fall off perfectly intact. This Ethan didn't even use his brain. She adored him so much. If her blood could truly heal humans, would she have stood by and watched him get hurt? Third time's the charm. I've warned you twice. Do you still want to take my blood for her? Yes, Ethan gritted his teeth. You owe her this, Melodia didn't want to argue. She turned her gaze to Livia. Even if I say you will regret using my blood, do you still want to use it? Livia's eyes flickered. Then she put on a tearful expression. Sister Melodia, I don't want to hurt you either, but Ethan and I are getting married soon. I really can't have a scar on my face. I'm begging you, please help me. Melodia gave them one last chance. Are you both sure about this? Ethan threw a dagger in front of her. Stop wasting time. Livia's injury can't wait. It was just a burn, not a fatal injury. What was there that couldn't wait? He just couldn't bear to see her suffer. Melodia closed her eyes. She suppressed the turmoil of emotions. What was there to be sad about? Wasn't this just how Ethan was? It was just that in the past, she had always believed that his blatant favoritism was reserved for her alone. Now she saw it clearly. He could give his favoritism to anyone, just not to her anymore. Fine. Melodia picked up the dagger and, over the large bowl they had already prepared, slit her wrist. As you wish. Blood flowed out, slowly filling the large bowl. Melodia swayed. Ethan subconsciously steadied her, but she gently pushed him away. Big brother, I want to celebrate my birthday on the yacht. Is that okay? Chapter 9. Ethan agreed quickly. Melodia knew he felt guilty. Although he didn't love her, he had genuinely cared for her. Otherwise, he would have asked for her blood long ago, not in a panic after Livia was injured. Thank you, big brother. Melodia bandaged her wound. She took 2 steps back and smiled brightly at Ethan. I'm tired of the scenery by the canal. I plan to take the yacht for a trip down the nearby Min River. Big brother and sister-in-law will surely come to support me, right? A strange feeling rose in Ethan's heart. He had hurt her, yet she wasn't crying or making a scene. Instead, she was inviting him and Livia for a boat trip. Had she really let him go? Or was this just another one of her tricks to get his attention? Otherwise, why would she insist on celebrating her birthday on the yacht he had given her? Ethan hesitated. Livia immediately interjected in a gentle voice, Melodia's birthday is in 2 days, right? But Ethan, the emperor said today that he wants us to accompany him to the royal cathedral for prayers in 2 days. Have you forgotten? Ethan closed his eyes. Melody, I'll hold a birthday banquet for you when I get back from the cathedral. A make-up birthday banquet. Melodia smiled. Okay, she was a mermaid princess. Of course her birthday banquet would be made up. It just wouldn't have anything to do with Ethan Sterling. The nameless sea would light the sky with celestial fire for her, a dazzling display that would last for 7 days without stopping. A sight so beautiful, the human world would never see it. In the blink of an eye, it was her birthday. Melodia, Ethan, and Livia left the Sterling Manor at the same time. One went south to the Grand Canal, the other 2 went north to the Royal Cathedral. At the manor gate, Ethan got into his carriage first. Livia stroked her face, which had become even more radiant after her burn healed, and walked over to Melodia, saying softly, Your blood is truly wonderful, sister. After your birthday, I'll have to trouble you again. Although you shouldn't have used my blood, Melodia took out a wedding veil from her sleeve and handed it to her. But still, congratulations on your wedding. This is a gift. You must use it. The veil had been brought from the nameless sea by Pearl. The mandarin ducks on it were dyed with the juice of a special spirit fruit from the mermaid clan, which could protect humans from the harmful effects of mermaid blood. Melodia wasn't intentionally trying to save Livia. It was just that this was originally the wedding gift she had prepared for Ethan. Although their wedding was no more, leaving this gift was a way to bring a proper end to the past 10 years. The gift was delivered. The rest had nothing to do with her anymore. Melodia paid no more attention to Livia. She walked briskly to Ethan's carriage. "Goodbye, Ethan Sterling," she said to herself, then continued on and got into her own carriage. Ethan lifted the carriage curtain, only to see her confident back. A sharp pain shot through his heart. He subconsciously wanted to jump out of the carriage and chase after her to ask her what she meant. Livia walked up quickly, looking troubled. "Ethan, Melodia said she doesn't want to embroider the wedding veil for me anymore. I think she must be angry about the bloodletting. Why don't we go to her birthday banquet today and then catch up with the Emperor's procession tomorrow?" Ethan laughed. "She's just being childish, throwing a little tantrum. It'll be fine after we make up her birthday banquet in a few days." They both sat back in the carriage. The two carriages passed each other. The window curtain was lifted by the wind. The sight of Ethan and Livia talking and laughing entered her eyes. Melodia took a deep breath. The long 10 years were finally over. Ethan Sterling. From now on, we will never meet again. Chapter 10, the Sterling Manor's yacht caught fire and sank in the river, and the adopted daughter of the manor perished. When this news reached the royal cathedral, Ethan Sterling was in a quiet room, writing a marriage contract. Hearing the news, his brush paused, and the ink smudged on the paper. It blurred the words, "A bond fated to wither." "Say that again?" His cold gaze fell on the messenger from the manor. "If you say one word wrong, I will cut out your tongue." The young servant trembled and buried his head even lower. The young miss. She took the yacht to the Min River for her birthday. It suddenly caught fire in the middle of the river, and there was no one around to rescue her. In the end, the yacht sank, and the young miss is missing. The steward led a search party all night and finally recovered a bloated female corpse. "Nonsense!" Ethan's eyes were bloodshot. The brush in his hand slammed onto the servant's head. The servant didn't dare to say any more. Livia's eyes flashed with a dark smile, then she feigned anger. "Melodia is a master. It's one thing for her to be mischievous, but how dare you servants help her with her nonsense?" "I wouldn't dare," the servant said, at a loss for words. Hearing Livia's words, Ethan had a sudden realization. "You're right. She's just angry that I didn't celebrate her birthday, angry that I'm marrying you, angry that I went to the frontier for 5 years without responding to her feelings. So she's deliberately making up this nonsense to scare me." "Yes," Livia motioned for the servant to leave, then added, "That yacht brought a magnificent dowry all the way from the southern provinces without any trouble. How could it possibly have an accident just from a trip down the river?" Ethan nodded distractedly. "The yacht I had specially built for her couldn't possibly have an accident." Livia picked up the brush and placed it in his hand. "You should focus on accompanying the Emperor in his prayers. I'll go back to the manor first and try to coax her. If I can't, I'll tell her the truth that the marriage decree was something you requested for her, and the dowry was also prepared for her." "Don't," Ethan stood up in a panic, accidentally knocking over the inkstone. The ink stained a large patch of his clothes, but he didn't seem to notice. "The enemy spies haven't been completely eliminated yet. If our marriage is exposed now, I'm afraid those desperados will target Melody. I can't risk her." Livia's hand, hidden in her sleeve, clenched tightly. Her face still wore a spring-like smile. "Don't worry. Since I promised you, I will definitely see this act through to the end. Thank you for your trouble." Ethan's heart was in turmoil, and he managed a strained smile. "Once this is all over, I will definitely find a good match for you so that Vice General Willow can rest in peace." Livia's smile faded. Ethan walked her all the way to her carriage. Watching the carriage disappear into the distance, he suddenly remembered the day they parted. Melodia had said, "Goodbye, Ethan Sterling." Her tone was so light, as if she knew what was about to happen, as light as a little bird about to break free from its cage. Impossible, Ethan clutched his chest, but he couldn't suppress the wave of pain that washed over him. "Melody is just angry. I just need to coax her and she'll be fine." He shook his head frantically and shouted, "Men, investigate this for me immediately. Scour the entire capital if you have to, but dig out those spies for me right now." He couldn't wait any longer. He had to tell Melody the truth as soon as possible. He had to let Melody know that he only had her, and he only wanted her the nameless sea. The waters were calm. Melodia sat on a seashell. She swung her mermaid tail leisurely while humming an unknown tune. Pearl swam over. "Princess, are you really not going to meet your future consort?" Melodia shook her head. She was a mermaid princess. Her marriage concerned the entire mermaid clan. She had run away and been willful for 10 years, but what was the result? She had returned covered in scars. Although the scars were gone now, the hurt had been real. She had already lost one gamble. It was time to shoulder the responsibilities of a princess. Chapter 11. Anyway, her father and mother, the king and queen, had already chosen someone. What did it matter if she met him or not? Celestial fire lit up the nameless sea. For 49 whole days, it never ceased. The mermaid clans celebrated through the nights. The wine here was different from that of the human world. Melodia was pulled around by them, drinking a cup here and a cup there, and soon she felt tipsy. She leaned unsteadily against a seashell, a jug of wine in her hand, laughing heartily at the dazzling celestial fire. "What is the princess laughing at?" A deep, pleasant voice sounded from her side. Melodia followed the voice and saw a handsome man with a face like jade walking towards her. The handsome man sat down beside her, took the wine jug from her hand with a smile, and gently handed her a cup, motioning for her to drink. Melodia drank it like a puppet on a string. The sweet spirit water slid down her throat, instantly clearing a third of her drunkenness. Melodia came to her senses. "You are?" The celestial fire swept past. Her gaze fell on the horns on the man's head, and she instantly understood. The dragon clan's crown prince, Kalin Drake, the most handsome man in the 8 seas. No wonder he had a beauty that could make her stare in a daze. Kalin drained the rest of the wine Melodia had been drinking. He then tossed the jug aside, knelt at her feet, and extended his hand. "Princess, allow me to introduce myself. I am Kalin, your future husband." "As I thought," Melodia nodded. Then she turned and exclaimed, "Wait, you said you are my husband?" The status of the mermaid clan among the mythical races was not low, but compared to the dragon clan, it was like heaven and earth. Even ordinary dragons rarely married into the mermaid clan, let alone the crown prince of the dragons. No wonder her father and mother had urged her so insistently to come back for this marriage alliance. They had found such a powerful backer. Kalin was also a little surprised. "You didn't know?" Melodia was embarrassed. "I just didn't expect that the marriage partner would be you. You're disappointed that it's me?" A shadow of darkness flickered in Kalin's eyes. "How could that be?" Melodia quickly shook her head. Throughout the entire mythical realms, it would be impossible to find a better marriage partner than him. "I'm afraid you'll be the one who's disappointed." She couldn't help but remind Kalin. "I don't know what leverage my father and mother have over the dragon clan to force you into this marriage with me, but if you, how do you know I wasn't willing?" Kalin's eyes curved into a smile, his face full of charm. The rest of Melodia's words got stuck in her throat. Kalin leaned in closer. "So, my wife, can you tell me now what you were laughing about earlier?" Melodia's heart trembled. Meeting Kalin's gaze, as gentle and vast as the sea, she subconsciously told the truth. "I was laughing at how foolish I was, giving up such beautiful celestial fire for the fireworks and yachts of the human world. If you like them, I will accompany you to see them in the future," Kalin said gently. As if he were talking about something extremely important, Melodia shook her head. "The human world isn't worth it." Looking at the vast celestial fire, she suddenly realized that after only a month back, Ethan's face was already becoming a blur. Since she had let go of the person, what else was there in the human world to hold her back? It was just small talk. Melodia didn't expect a response. But Kalin suddenly took her hand and said with a solemn expression, "Melodia, the human world isn't worth it, but you are." Chapter 12. The Sterling Manor was decorated with lanterns and colorful banners. Matriarch Eleanor Sterling and the old Marquis sat at the head of the hall, their faces beaming with joy. Ethan Sterling, dressed in wedding attire, stood in the center of the hall, holding the hand of Livia Willow, who was adorned in a phoenix crown and splendid robes. There was not a trace of joy on his face. The wedding officiant announced loudly, "First bow to heaven and earth." Livia bowed upon hearing the words. After waiting for a moment, she didn't see the person next to her move. Ethan was currently staring blankly at the entrance, as if waiting for someone to appear. But apart from the congratulatory guests and the manor's servants, there was no one else. The familiar figure, the woman he had loved for 10 years and yearned to marry, did not come. This is a setup to eliminate the enemy assassins. Are you going to let all our efforts go to waste? Livia reminded him in a low voice. She will come, right? Ethan asked, not answering her question. Livia clenched her fists tightly. That wretched Melodia, even in death, why must she interfere with me? Ever since he heard about the yacht incident, Ethan had been frantically searching for the enemy spies. For over 40 days, he had rushed around the capital, passing by the Sterling Manor several times without entering. She had managed to conceal Melodia's death and finally made it to the wedding day. She had used the excuse of eliminating the assassins to get Ethan into his wedding clothes. But in the end, Ethan wouldn't even give her a proper look. No matter how much anger burned in her heart, she had to suppress it for now. Don't worry, Melodia loves you so much. As long as we continue with the wedding ceremony, she's bound to come out of hiding, Livia persuaded gently. We're only pretending to bow. We can explain everything clearly later, and she will understand. Ethan forced himself to rally. You're right. As long as the assassins are not eliminated, I cannot be at ease. Livia glanced at the officiant. The officiant understood and shouted again, first bow to heaven and earth. Ethan complied and bowed with Livia. Second bow to the parents. Ethan still complied. When it came to the bow between the couple, he suddenly froze. An unprecedented panic brought him back to his senses. No, I swore that I would only marry Melody in this life. Even if it's an act, I will never betray my oath, nor will I betray Melody. The enemy spies were all wiped out. The few remaining assassins were no threat. Why continue to torture her and himself? At worst, he would keep Melody by his side every day, using his own body as a shield to protect her. Ethan tore off the ceremonial flower on his chest and was about to rush out the door. The old madam slammed her hand on the table. Ethan, what are you doing? Grandmother, have you forgotten what you promised me? Ethan's eyes reddened. You said that as long as I returned safely, and as long as Melody could withstand 100 lashes, you would agree to let her marry me. You clearly know that Livia and I— Enough, the old madam shouted sternly. How long are you going to make a scene for a dead person? The word dead struck Ethan like a thunderbolt. He froze in place, but still gritted his teeth and denied it. Melody is not dead. She's just angry with me, so she's hiding. You couldn't even recognize the face of that corpse. How can you be sure it was her? The old madam closed her eyes. Men, bring in the belongings. Chapter 13. Livia grew anxious. Grandmother, he has to know eventually. Let him be. The old madam waved her hand. She turned and expressed her apologies to the wedding guests. The guests dispersed. Ethan remained motionless, his dark gaze fixed on the attendant who was carrying the belongings and walking towards him step by step. He recognized it at a glance. It was the dress Melodia wore on her birthday. It was also the one she wore on her birthday 5 years ago. He had personally designed the pattern and had it meticulously tailored. It was also her favorite, one of a kind in the world. This was taken from that corpse. You should know better than anyone what this dress means to Melodia, right? The old madam sighed. If she were alive, would she let someone else wear this dress? If she were alive, would she let you and Livia go through with the wedding ceremony without a word? Every word was like a knife twisting in his heart. Ethan shook his head, still refusing to believe it. Melody, they're all lying to me, right? Before he could finish, a metallic taste rose in his throat. A mouthful of sweet blood sprayed out, splattering all over the dress. The next moment, he collapsed to the ground, but he still held onto the dress tightly. Ethan was unconscious for a full 7 days. In his dreams, he saw Melodia sweetly calling him Eth. Then he saw her with red eyes, questioning why he had run away. He opened his mouth to explain, but Melodia would bounce over and say, "Goodbye, Ethan Sterling." Ethan woke with a start. He felt a pain in his chest as if it were being torn apart. Livia, who was dozing by his bed, immediately had a maid bring a bowl of medicinal soup. Eth, how are you? Where's Melody? Ethan clutched his chest and called for his shadow guard. Men, search the entire capital for the young miss. If you can't find her in the capital, search the whole country until you find her. Livia finally couldn't take it anymore. Eth, wake up, Melodia is dead, she will never. Shut up, Ethan's expression changed drastically. He turned and grabbed Livia by the neck. She loves me so much, how could she bear to leave me? Don't you dare curse her. What makes you think she loves you? Livia laughed. She had noticed it the day the old storeroom caught fire. Melodia was cleaning out everything related to herself, so she used Ethan's hand to give Melodia a grand gift, cutting off her last bit of hope. And now, it was time to uproot Melodia from Ethan's heart. Ethan froze. He hadn't expected Livia to ask such a foolish question. It was normal for others not to know. But she had witnessed their entire relationship from beginning to end. How could she not know? You knew she confessed her feelings to me on her birthday 5 years ago, Ethan reminded her. And you were the one who said her background was unknown and she couldn't be my official wife, telling me to go to the frontier to earn merits. Have you forgot? Livia nodded calmly. I did see you come back excitedly to get the engagement gift that day, and I did say those things to you. But you were the one who told me Melodia confessed to you. I never saw it with my own eyes. You think I'm lying to you? Ethan frowned. I just think you care about her too much and may have misunderstood her intentions, Livia suggested. Otherwise, why would she destroy the jujube tree you planted for her, the courtyard you personally decorated, the flowers you liked, and the memories you carefully collected? For a moment, confusion clouded Ethan's face. He knew about the jujube tree, the flowers, and the courtyard. At the time, he thought Melodia was just tired of the old scenery and wanted a change. But the things he had put away to avoid the spies, weren't they all safely stored in the storeroom? At the time, Livia had even been burned trying to prevent the fire in the old storeroom from spreading to the new one. Ethan couldn't sit still any longer. He rushed to the storeroom, opened the hidden door, and saw the 5 chests neatly arranged. He breathed a sigh of relief. Livia followed him in. Seeing this, she asked again, "Do you have any proof that she loves you?" "Of course." Ethan subconsciously reached for the jade pendant at his waist, but his hand found nothing. Only then did he remember that Melody had been drunk that day, pestering him for a new one. And to avoid acting on impulse and scaring her, he had taken off the pendant and sword tassel to appease her, then rushed back to his room to soak in cold water. Now the old ones were gone, but the new ones had never arrived. Ethan's heart felt heavy and suffocated. He quickly added, "She once sought out 1,000-year-old enchanted steel to forge 2 peerless swords for me, with my name molded onto the blades." A hidden smile played on Livia's lips. "Words are no proof. Fine, I'll open your eyes today." Ethan turned to open the chests. It was perfect timing. He missed Melody. Since Melody was angry and hiding from him, he could at least look at her portraits. The moment he opened the chest, he was stunned. It was empty. There was nothing inside. Impossible, Ethan couldn't believe it and quickly went to open the other chests. Empty. Empty. They were all empty. Ethan stood there, stunned for a long moment. Suddenly, he pushed Livia aside and rushed out of the new storeroom, heading straight for the half-destroyed old one. Looking at the ashes on the ground, he remembered what Melodia had said. "I accidentally dropped a tinderbox while I was looking for something. There probably wasn't anything important in it, right?" No, her expression at the time clearly showed. She knew what was inside, but he had been so worried that Livia would be scarred and unable to marry. And that he and Melody would owe her and have to take care of her for the rest of their lives. So he hadn't paid any attention to Melody's strange behavior. Thinking back now, Melody had done it on purpose. She wanted to destroy everything, every trace of her existence, every proof of their love. Did she hate him that much that she wouldn't even leave him a single memento? But Melody? Not everything can be burned away in a fire. Find them for me. Melody's things, at all costs, you must get them back for me. Chapter 14, The Young Marquis Sterling Has Gone Mad. While this story was circulating in the capital, Melodia was busy preparing for her wedding. Normally, this wouldn't be her responsibility. But the Dragon clan was incredibly wealthy. Kalin's betrothal gifts arrived, ship after ship. There was more than enough for her family, even enough to be distributed among the entire mermaid clan. Yet Kalin insisted that she personally inventory everything. He said she should pick out her favorite things first, and the rest would be put into the treasury. With the crown prince of the Dragon clan being so attentive, Melodia naturally couldn't be neglectful. As she was inventorying the 10th ship, Pearl arrived. A few days ago, she had been borrowed by Kalin, who said he had some matters to ask her about. Seeing her now, Melodia casually asked, "Is the prince's business finished?" "Princess, he is the prince consort," Pearl corrected. "What potion did he give you that you're so protective of him?" Melodia laughed. "Because he's good to the princess," Pearl replied frankly. Everyone in the nameless sea knows that the princess is the apple of the prince consort's eye. Melodia glared at her. Nonsense. She and Kalin had never met before that night. Although she had some beauty, in front of the most handsome man in the 8 seas, who would dare to boast of their own beauty. Besides, beauty was Kalin's least remarkable quality. What did she have that could make such a being fall for her? Pearl was unconvinced. The king and queen love the princess the most, but for your birthday, they can only light the celestial fire for 7 days this time. It burned for 49 days, all lit by the prince consort for the princess. Melodia's heart skipped a beat. The celestial fire? He lit it. The celestial fire was so dazzling, but it was also a rare sight. That was because lighting the celestial fire for 7 days consumed 100 years of the lighter's magical power. So, in the entire nameless sea, only she, the mermaid princess cherished by the whole clan, could see it on her birthday. After Melodia found out the truth, she refused many times. But her father and mother always said it was the pomp she deserved as a princess, representing the honor of the entire clan, and it was not up for debate. They also said that after she got married, it would naturally stop. They had tens of thousands of years of power. Melodia could only let them be. This time, it had burned for 49 consecutive days. She had thought it was because she was about to get married, and they wouldn't have to spend their power on celestial fire anymore, so they had made up for the 10 years she was in the human world all at once. She never thought it would be Kalin who lit it. 49 days meant 700 years of power. No wonder Pearl thought he was deeply in love with her. Melodia looked at the dazzling array of betrothal gifts and drifted off in thought. Although she didn't know why Kalin had agreed to the marriage, since he had been so gracious, she naturally had to respond in kind. A true heart for a true heart. She was not Ethan Sterling. She couldn't do something like casting aside another's true feelings as if they were worthless. Just as she was thinking, Pearl asked again, "If the princess doesn't believe the prince consort, is it because you still like that human?" Melodia laughed. "If I still liked him, why would I be here now? You really don't like him anymore?" Pearl didn't believe her. "When have I ever lied to you?" Melodia saw that her expression was off and immediately frowned. "What are you trying to say?" "Actually," Pearl hesitated for a moment, then confessed her purpose. "This time, I was entrusted by the prince consort to go to the human world, and I heard some things about that human. Everyone says he's gone mad, searching for the princess everywhere. I didn't believe it, so I secretly went to the capital to take a look, and he seems really mad." Melodia's gaze flickered, but there were no more emotional waves in her heart. She gently fiddled with the pearl crown Kalin had sent, her tone indifferent. "If he's mad, the Sterling Manor and his wife will take care of it. We don't need to worry about it." "But," Pearl's expression was solemn, "he seems to have discovered that you are a mermaid and is asking around for a way to get to the nameless sea." Melodia froze for a moment, then laughed. "How can a human enter the nameless sea? Ethan Sterling is just daydreaming." Just as she was about to continue inventorying the gifts from the Dragon Clan, another mermaid swam over, holding a brocade box. "Princess, the Dragon Clan has delivered the wedding dress." The wedding dress. Melodia looked at Pearl in shock. Pearl immediately wagged her tail and dived into the sea, laughing playfully. "Now the princess should believe that the prince consort only has eyes for you, right?" Chapter 15. Pearl's playful question echoed in her ears. Melodia took the brocade box. Her heart felt heavy, a stifling feeling settling in her chest. The mermaid clan had a unique custom. When a mermaid married, she had to use her own scales to make a wedding dress. One dress required at least half of a mermaid's scales. The process was excruciatingly painful, almost as painful as being caught in the rain in the human world. The wedding dress symbolized that all the bitterness and pain were endured before the marriage, so that the couple could have a long and happy life together. However, unlike the vague blessings of the human world, this was a ritual that could truly be realized. Mermaids loved purely. A curse was placed on the wedding dress. If the marriage was unhappy, the scales would automatically release a poison that would kill the one whose heart had changed. So, the sordid affairs of abandoning one's wife and children that happened in the human world were almost unheard of. Of course, the scales didn't have to be one's own. The betrothed's could also be used. However, the other person would endure 100 times the pain when the scales were taken. And if their heart changed in the future, the pain they would suffer when poisoned would be doubled. This was almost equivalent to placing one's life in the hands of one's wife. In her 200 years of existence, Melodia had only seen one such case. Now, the second had appeared, and it was her husband. Melodia caressed the brocade box. After a long time, she finally made up her mind. "Pearl, where is Kalin?" "The prince consort is on the Isle of Glass, where you loved to go as a child," Pearl popped up. "If the princess takes the initiative to visit him, he will be overjoyed." Melodia took a light leap and dived into the sea. On the Isle of Glass, Kalin covered his mouth and coughed lightly. A dragon guard immediately advised him, "Your Highness, you have just given so many scales for the wedding dress. You should not overexert yourself at this time." Kalin shook his head and continued to look through the account books. "The wedding cannot have any mistakes. Tell everyone below to keep a close watch." The dragon guard was helpless. "But we've received news from the human world that the man seems to have found a way into the nameless sea. If the princess finds out the truth and has a change of heart, will all that your Highness has done be worth it? If she is happy, then everything is worth it." Kalin smiled faintly. A hint of pain flickered in his eyes, which he immediately concealed. This guard had been with Kalin for over 100 years and naturally knew his thoughts. He could only sigh. "For the past 10 years, your Highness has transformed several times to visit the princess in the human world, but the princess only had eyes for that human. Now that you've finally waited for the princess to give up and agree to the marriage, will you really be able to let go then?" Kalin turned to look at the portrait beside him. In it, Melodia was smiling brightly, her fishtail swaying carefree. She was breathtakingly beautiful. "What if I can't let go? A human's life is so short. I have plenty of time, I can wait." His voice was ethereal, his tone resolute. Under the sea, Melodia's eyes reddened unconsciously. She had countless questions, but at that moment, all she could think of was Kalin's words, "How do you know I wasn't willing?" Her dead heart began to beat again, little by little. Just then, a cry of alarm came from the island. "Your Highness," Melodia immediately surfaced. Seeing Kalin lying on the ground with a pale face, she quickly went ashore and ran over. The dragon guard blocked her. "Princess, His Highness is not well right now and cannot receive." "Move," Melodia pushed the guard aside. "I can save him." She picked up a sharp shell and cut her wrist. Blood gushed out. She quickly pressed her wrist to Kalin's lips. Although Kalin was unconscious, he kept his lips tightly sealed, refusing to drink a single drop of her blood. Melodia was at a loss. She simply pinched Kalin's jaw, drank the blood herself, and passed it to him mouth to mouth. Mouthful after mouthful. She didn't dare to stop. After all, she had experienced the pain of being caught in the rain, which was already bone deep. She couldn't imagine the 100-fold pain Kalin had endured when his scales were taken. What's more, he had just lost 700 years of power for her. Originally, she was just trying to save his life, with no romantic intentions. But just as she was passing him blood again, Kalin suddenly took the lead and kissed her back, instantly making her face flush red. An unfamiliar image flashed in her mind. It was her as a child, using the same method to save a small, heavily injured dragon. She had even joked that a mermaid's kiss was only for her lover, and told the little dragon to come to the nameless sea to propose. Unexpectedly, 100 years later, a dragon actually came to propose. Melodia instantly understood. "So, the little dragon who accidentally entered the nameless sea back then was you?" Kalin opened his eyes, his gaze burning with fire. "You finally remember me." Chapter 16, The Sterling Manor Study. The lamplight was dim. Ethan Sterling sat alone at his desk, his fingertips caressing a peach blossom hairpin. It was a very common style. Many noble ladies in the capital had worn it. But Ethan remembered that this was the one Melody had spotted and fallen in love with when they were out on the streets 7 years ago. Later, it was accidentally bumped, and a petal was chipped. The day he and Livia went to Sunset Cliff to put on a show and lure out the spies, Melody was wearing this very hairpin when she arrived in a disheveled state. Later, when it started to rain, in order not to alert the enemy and put Melody in danger, he had resisted the urge to carry her back to the carriage and left with Livia. He had seemed indifferent, but in reality, he remembered every detail, from the pouch at her waist to the hairpin on her head. Melody disappeared for 3 days. When he saw her again, it was by the canal. At that time, all her jewelry was gone. Ethan's thoughts reached this point. His chest tightened, and he coughed up another mouthful of blood. He forced down the blood, his gaze filled with pain as he looked at the peasant woman kneeling below. "You're saying she was in the rain on Sunset Cliff for 2 days? I don't know, commoner." The peasant woman prostrated herself on the ground, her voice trembling. She had never imagined that the living saint she had casually saved was the very girl the young Marquis Sterling was frantically searching for. To get back the things the girl had left behind, the young Marquis had even offered to pay 10 times the price. Seeing how much Ethan cared, she couldn't help but add, "But when I saved the girl, she was already at death's door." Enough, Ethan clenched his fist tightly. The hairpin pierced his palm, and blood stained the peach blossom petals. He didn't even notice. But the thought of the little girl who used to cry at the touch of a single drop of rain, curled up and helpless in a downpour, made him feel as if his heart was being torn apart. He couldn't imagine how much pain his Melody must have been in, how heartbroken and desperate she must have felt. And all of this was because of a certain someone. "Bring Livia Willow here." Immediately, a moment later, Livia, with her hair disheveled and clothes in disarray, was dragged before Ethan by the guards. Livia struggled. "Ethan Sterling, you've imprisoned me. How could you do this to my father, to our childhood friendship?" Ethan walked towards her step by step. His eyes were dead, but a thick killing intent emanated from him. "The day at Sunset Cliff, you were the one who intercepted the men I sent to find Melody, weren't you?" I was just afraid of alerting the enemy." Livia shrank back, frightened by his murderous aura. "I didn't expect that Melodia would be afraid of the rain and not hide herself. Don't call her sister. You're not worthy," Ethan beckoned. A shadow guard appeared and presented a stack of letters. He threw the letters on the ground. Collaborating with the enemy to orchestrate this grand scheme of murder by a borrowed knife, was it for the greater good? Or for the position of the lady of the manor? You know better than anyone, seeing her own handwriting on the letters, Livia's eyes trembled violently. I just loved you too much, Eth. Having the enemy send spies into the capital, taking the initiative to offer a plan to pretend to be my beloved, making me favor you in front of everyone so that Melody would misunderstand. Then telling me to put away Melody's things, while you secretly replaced them with empty boxes, then pretending to be injured while saving the things, demanding that Melody give you her blood. Ethan listed them one by one. If it weren't for his frantic investigation during this time, which led him to discover her behind-the-scenes manipulations, he would never have known that he had been played for a fool by a woman. "If I'm not mistaken, you did it on purpose 5 years ago, didn't you?" "Is it wrong to love someone?" Livia cried, her tears like pear blossoms in the rain. "I just wanted." "Stop acting, Livia Willow." Ethan drew a dagger from his waist. "You knew how important Melody was to me, yet you dared to hurt her so badly. I assume you're prepared to repay it 100-fold. "No, Ethan Sterling, you can't do this to me." Livia scrambled backwards in fear, only to be dragged back by the guards. The cold dagger slid across her cheek. She immediately screamed, I have something else that Melodia left behind." Ethan applied a little pressure. The dagger immediately pierced Livia's cheek. The bead of blood that welled up reminded him of Melody's expression when she gave her blood. His eyes turned red. He couldn't help but want to see more on Livia's face. "I really do." This time, Livia was truly scared. She gave me a wedding veil on her birthday." Ethan's movement stopped. A wedding veil. Was it the wedding veil his Melody had embroidered after enduring 100 lashes? That should have been hers. How could it be left in Livia's hands? Where is it? "As long as you promise not to harm me, I'll give you the veil, I swear." Livia swore to the heavens. Ethan closed his eyes. "Fine, I promise." With that, he slashed his own wrist with the dagger. Someone had to pay for the cut Melody had endured, since he couldn't touch her. Then he would pay for it himself. Chapter 17, Ethan bandaged his wound. Under the guard's watch, Livia brought the wedding veil. It was a simple-looking veil, but the pair of swimming mandarin ducks on it were incredibly lifelike. It was made of some unknown material that felt cool to the touch and was strangely soothing. Even Ethan's frantic heart calmed down at that moment. "This is..." His eyes suddenly lit up. "Quick, go find Master Mo." The guard left to find the person. Livia asked cautiously, "Can I go now?" Before she could finish, she gasped in pain. She didn't know if it was because Ethan's cut was deep, but she now felt an intense pain across her entire face, as if someone were slowly peeling off her skin with a knife. She wanted to immediately apply the rouge made from Melodia's blood. But the current Ethan was a madman, and she didn't dare to use it in front of him. Ethan said nothing. Livia scrambled away. As soon as she was out of the study, she eagerly took out the special rouge and applied it to the wound on her face. The next moment, a painful scream echoed through the entire courtyard. Ethan strolled out. He saw Livia on the ground, clutching her bloody and mangled face, screaming incessantly. And beside her lay a complete and exquisite human skin her face. Ethan bent down. Livia immediately reached out to grab Ethan. "Save me, Eth." Ethan's hand went past her and picked up her special rouge. Melody said her blood was not for you to use. This outcome is nothing more than what you brought upon yourself. He watched her scream in pain and despair until her breath stopped. His eyes were completely indifferent. A guard entered the courtyard with Master Mo, just in time to witness this scene. Master Mo walked up quickly, picked up Livia's face, and marveled. The ancestors' records were indeed correct. This is the consequence of using mermaid blood on a human. It's simply perfect. Master, take a look at these two things. Ethan handed him the wedding veil and the rouge. Master Mo took them. He touched one, then sniffed the other. Soon, a look of ecstatic joy appeared on his face. This is a mandarin duck dyed with the juice of a mermaid's spirit fruit and rouge made from mermaid's blood. Excellent according to the ancestors' lost manuscript. With these two things, along with a spell and a ritual, one can temporarily transform into a mermaid and enter the nameless sea. Ethan was overjoyed. Really? Master Mo smiled confidently. If I hadn't sensed the aura of a mermaid from the items Miss Melodia left behind, the young Marquis would probably still be in the dark, right? I believe you. Ethan's gaze was like a torch. Can we perform the ritual now? The ritual is risky. The young Marquis should think it over carefully, Master Mo reminded him. If it succeeds, you will have 1 month to win back Miss Melodia. If it fails, the consequences range from losing your legs to losing your life. Ethan opened his palm. Looking at the blood-stained peach blossom hairpin, his gaze softened. As long as I can see Melody, I have no regrets, even if I die 100 times. Good. Master Mo immediately called for a guard to arrange the ritual items. Tonight, at midnight, we meet at the canal. The nameless sea. It was a day of great joy. The festive atmosphere stretched for 1,000 miles. After 3 full days of celebration, the sea finally quieted down. Melodia, dressed in a dazzlingly beautiful wedding gown, stared at the bright moon in the sky, lost in thought. A pair of hands came from behind and gently wrapped around her waist. What is my wife thinking about? I was thinking, the dragon clan is in that direction, right? Melodia took a step back. She leaned directly into Kalin's arms, greedily inhaling the warm, sun-like scent from him. Will your people like me? They definitely will. Kalin tilted his head and gently kissed her on the cheek. After all, you are my life. As his words fell, fireworks bloomed over the sea. A yacht, illuminated by the moonlight and fireworks, slowly approached. Chapter 18, the fireworks were brilliant. The yacht swayed gently. Melodia's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she remembered the words of Pearl and the dragon guard. Ethan Sterling seems to have found a way into the nameless sea. Kalin, she turned to explain. You said you liked it last time, so I made a special trip to the human world to find it. What do you think? Isn't it beautiful? Kalin gently took her words. Do you like this wedding gift? Under the moonlight, his eyes were deep, as if they could contain all her past pain and suffering. It's beautiful. Melodia's heart ached, and she couldn't help but turn and hug him. I like it very much. As long as you like it, Kalin sighed. His tone carried a hint of imperceptible sorrow, but Melodia sensed it. She looked up at him. I like it because you gave it to me. Kalin's gaze froze for a moment. Suddenly, a wild joy bloomed, and he couldn't help but smile. Do you really mean that? Of course. Melodia's eyes curved into crescents. Close your eyes first. I have a wedding gift for you too. All right. Kalin eagerly closed his eyes. The smile on his lips couldn't be suppressed. Melodia stood on her tiptoes and placed a light kiss on his lips. The moment he opened his eyes in surprise, a necklace came into view, shining brightly in the moonlight and fireworks. One surprise after another. Kalin's heart surged, and he could no longer hold back. He pulled Melodia into a tight embrace and kissed her forcefully yet reverently. After a long time, Melodia pushed him away, her face flushed. "Shall I put it on for you?" Kalin shook his head and only asked, "Did it hurt?" He could see it at a glance. The necklace was made from her own scales. How could he bear to wear such a precious item? "It hurt." Melodia nodded honestly. Under Kalin's pained gaze, she took his hand again. "But compared to the wedding dress you gave me, this is nothing." "Thank you, my wife." Kalin's eyes grew hot, and he quickly pulled Melodia into his arms. "This is the best gift in the world. I will definitely cherish it." He didn't say it hurt, but his words and actions expressed nothing but heartache. He also didn't say not to do such things again, because he knew she was an independent being with her own thoughts and decisions. He respected her choices. Melodia had never received such a special kind of love. Although it was never expressed in words, she could clearly feel that he loved her. Without a doubt, Melodia couldn't help but hug him back. She knew that what she felt for Kalin now was not yet love. But from now on, she was willing to do everything to love him, to respond to his love. The fireworks faded. The yacht docked at the Isle of Glass. As soon as Melodia turned around, she saw a charming girl get off the yacht. "Brother Kalin, didn't we agree to go play in the human world? Why did you leave me and come to the nameless sea? It's a good thing I'm clever and saw the yacht you specially made for me." Melodia froze. What was going on? Another Livia Willow. She turned to look at Kalin. But Kalin was only staring at the girl. Melodia's heart tightened, and an indescribable pain spread through her. It was worse than when she first met Livia. After all, at that time, she had already spent 5 years accepting the fact that Ethan might not love her. And now she had just confirmed Kalin's love for her, only to receive such a grand gift. On their wedding night, no less. Melodia felt she should say something, but before she could speak, Kalin had already rebuked her coldly. "Lana, watch your words. Don't say things that will cause my wife to misunderstand. The yacht was prepared for my wife. It has her portrait and name carved on it and has nothing to do with you. I went to the human world for my wife, and I came to the nameless sea for my wife. I have never traveled with you, nor have I ever shown you any intimacy or favor. Your unauthorized use of my yacht is already a transgression. Spouting nonsense and provoking the crown princess is a capital offense. Considering your father is a valiant general of the dragon clan, I will spare your life this time. But if there is a next time, not even your father, not even the dragon king himself, will be able to save you." The merciless words made the girl's face turn pale instantly. The girl knelt and begged for mercy, but Kalin remained unmoved and had the guards drag her away. Then, with a snap of his fingers, he summoned a celestial flame that instantly engulfed the entire yacht. In the firelight, Melodia stared at Kalin's cold profile. Her shattered heart felt as if it were being pieced back together, bit by bit. She had once thought that what Ethan had shown her was favoritism. Only now did she know that favoritism that did not change or shift for any reason was true favoritism. Chapter 19, the yacht burned to ashes. Only then did Kalin lower his eyes to look at Melodia. His eyes were full of apology. "It was my fault." SHH. Melodia stood on her toes and kissed the corner of his lips. "A moment of spring night is worth 1,000 gold. Tonight, there is only you and me." "Melody, you're so wonderful." Kalin was moved. He swept Melodia into his arms and carried her back to their room. A night of passionate lovemaking ensued. The next day at noon, Melodia finally woke up. Kalin was gently massaging her waist, his eyes overflowing with tenderness, as if he were looking at a rare treasure. Pearl brought in their meal. As soon as she saw Melodia, she laughed. "The prince consort's stamina is really good." Melodia's face flushed red, and she shot Pearl a playful glare. Pearl immediately covered her mouth, glanced at Kalin, and slipped out with a giggle. "It's all your fault," Melodia pounded on Kalin's chest. My fault." Kalin joyfully caught her hand, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her again and again. "If I had known that a mermaid in love sings such a moving song, I would have kept kissing my wife's lips." "You're still talking," Melodia glared at him. Kalin's heart melted. All right, I won't say it tonight, I'll just do it, how about that?" Melodia didn't want to talk to him anymore. After their meal, Melodia took Kalin to pay their respects to her father and mother, the king and queen. Kalin was the crown prince of the dragon clan. Now that they were married, she would naturally follow him to live in the Dragon Sea. Originally, given the difference in status between the mermaid and dragon clans, even the wedding should have been held in the Dragon Sea. It was Kalin who insisted. He said she was the only princess of the mermaid clan, and according to tradition, she should be married from the nameless sea. This was his way of showing her respect, and even more so, it was a way of showing respect to the mermaid clan. He let all the mythical clans know that her marrying him was not a case of her marrying up. They were equals. Melodia held Kalin's hand. Her face still feigned anger, but her heart was warm. To be married to a husband who expressed his love in such subtle ways, all the pain and suffering of her 10 years in the human world seemed to fade into insignificance. She was even a little grateful that she had woken up at some point. However, just as they were leaving the palace, they came face to face with a very familiar, handsome face. Melodia froze. Ethan Sterling. A wild joy erupted in Ethan's eyes. Melody, I've finally found you. Before he could finish, he was already swimming towards her with an awkward flick of his new fishtail. Melodia subconsciously looked at Kalin. Kalin was equally shocked. He froze for a moment before forcing a smile at her. You two talk. Melodia quickly grabbed his arm. Don't go the intimate gesture, the dependent tone. Ethan was all too familiar with it. He and Melody had been just as close for 5 years. But he never expected to see this scene between Melody and another man. Jealousy instantly flared. He used almost all his strength to point at Kalin and ask, Melody, who is he? Young Marquis Sterling, let me introduce you. This is my husband, Kalin. Melodia linked her arm affectionately with Kalin's and looked at him calmly. There were no more waves in her eyes. Ethan seemed not to understand and tilted his head. Whose band? Melodia lowered her gaze. Ethan Sterling, you and I were never meant to be. Those 10 years were my own doing. Now you are free and I am very happy. There's no need to continue this entanglement. With that, she was about to leave with Kalin. Ethan refused to give up. You love me, don't you? Melodia closed her eyes. I did love you. Ethan's pale face instantly brightened. Kalin subconsciously gripped Melodia's arm. His fingertips were still trembling slightly. But he said nothing, quietly waiting for Melodia's decision. Melodia squeezed his hand back and continued. I once thought this love would burn forever, but from the moment I understood you didn't love me, my love began to wither, eventually lost in your repeated avoidance and coldness. I love you, Ethan rushed forward. How could I not love you? From the first time we met, I fell in love with you. It's just that you were so young then, I was afraid you would mistake gratitude and familial affection for love, so I never expressed my feelings. And those 5 years, I went to the frontier to earn military merits so that I could marry you openly and be with you for a lifetime. I survived countless near-death experiences by thinking of you. Later, Ethan was afraid he had missed something in his explanation. He wished he could pour out all the love that had grown with each passing day. He believed that Melody was just angry. She understood him so well. She loved him so much. As long as he cleared up all the misunderstandings, she would forgive him, she would come back to him, but Melodia just watched him with a blank expression. It wasn't until he mentioned that Livia was just a cover, that the wedding had been prepared for her from the beginning, that she suddenly spoke up, interrupting his explanation. Ethan Sterling, she said, I don't care anymore. Chapter 20, Ethan Sterling was driven away by the mermaid guards. As he left, he kept shouting, Melody, I love you, refusing to give up. Melodia took several deep breaths. Finally, she managed to suppress the irritation in her heart. She believed what Ethan had said. After all, for the first 5 years, she had genuinely felt his favoritism. Unfortunately, the harm he caused later was also real. It wouldn't just disappear with a simple, it was a misunderstanding. The love was gone. All that was left was a mess. How could they go back? Besides, now she only wanted to spend the rest of her life responding to Kalin's love. She was just afraid that Ethan couldn't see this. Melodia's brow furrowed. Kalin couldn't bear to see her like this and quickly took her hand. Whatever you decide, I will listen to you. You're not going to fight for it? Melodia was speechless. Kalin wanted to ask if he could fight for her, but the words got stuck in his throat, and he forced them back down. As long as you're happy, I'm fine with anything. Melodia was exasperated. This guy, did he not remember they were already married? He not only had the right, but also a good chance of winning. Why couldn't he be brave for once, be firm for once, and not let her leave? Kalin thought she was hesitating and said again, "You don't have to worry about me." Melodia didn't want to hear anymore. She glared at him, threw his hand away, and swam towards the abyss of the nameless sea. Watching her disappear, Kalin's heart sank little by little. A dragon guard appeared. "Your Highness, the crown princess seems to have gone after Ethan Sterling. Should we continue to follow and protect her?" "No need." Kalin closed his eyes. "Forgive my bluntness, Your Highness, but the crown princess doesn't seem to be uninterested in you. Why don't you force her to stay? You can keep her body, but not her heart. What's the point?" Kalin clutched his aching heart. "I tried, I had her, that's already very good. If I'm too greedy?" He didn't finish his sentence, only a sigh remained. As night fell, Melodia returned to the Golden Clam, weary from her journey. Kalin wasn't there. She summoned Pearl. "Have you found out what's going on with Ethan Sterling?" "Yes, Princess. 300 years ago, the mermaid clan almost faced extinction and was saved by a cultivator who accidentally entered the sea. To show his gratitude, the king left him a way for humans to temporarily enter the sea. One is the juice of a spirit fruit, the other is mermaid blood. With a spell and a ritual, a human can become a mermaid for a month. If they stay for more than a month without returning to the human world, they will turn into foam and remain in the nameless sea forever." Pearl's investigation was very thorough. Melodia breathed a sigh of relief. "So, Ethan Sterling can only stay in the nameless sea for a month?" Pearl nodded. "In principle, yes." Melodia frowned. "So, there's a way to extend his stay?" She didn't want to see Ethan Sterling anymore. It was best to cut off all possibilities at the source. Pearl looked troubled, hesitating to speak. Melodia couldn't stand it. "Spit it out." "As long as a dragon's reverse scale is sealed in a human's danshan, they can freely enter and exit the nameless sea without becoming a mermaid," Pearl said in one breath, then asked worriedly. "The princess wouldn't. For Ethan Sterling?" Before she could finish her question, Kalin returned. Pearl instantly fell silent. Melodia waved her hand to dismiss Pearl. Kalin hesitated for a moment, then walked over and opened his palm to her. There was a ring on it. The design was exquisite, and it was clear that a lot of care had gone into it. "For me," the day's frustrations instantly vanished from Melodia, and her eyes lit up with a smile. "Try it," Kalin nodded. He then took her hand and gently slipped it on. The ring was a perfect fit. Melodia was very satisfied. She held up her hand, looking at it from left to right for a while before saying softly, "Don't use parts of your body to make gifts anymore. This." Kalin's eyes darted away. "This is just an ordinary piece of dragon bone. It's nothing." Indeed, the dragon scale was an ordinary dragon scale. The dragon bone was an ordinary dragon bone, but the pain of taking them was not ordinary. Melodia sighed. "I know you want to give me everything, but I really don't need it. Because with you, I have everything." Kalin's eyes darkened. "Melody, if you want anything, just tell me. I will give you whatever you want." Even if what she wanted was his reverse scale. If she asked for it, he would offer it with both hands. Chapter 21, a month wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. The day after Kalin gave her the dragon bone ring, he received a secret message from the dragon clan and had to rush back to the dragon sea. But a mermaid marrying out had to undergo a clan blessing ceremony, which was held half a month after the wedding. So Melodia had to stay in the nameless sea for the time being. Kalin wanted to leave a few dragon guards to protect her, but Melodia refused. After all, the nameless sea was her home turf. Nothing could happen to her. Besides, with Ethan Sterling around, any dragon left behind could become a target for him to steal a reverse scale. She didn't want Ethan to get his wish. Kalin agreed with a calm expression, but as he turned to leave, he couldn't suppress the disappointment and reluctance in his heart. He hugged Melodia tightly, wishing he could merge her into his very bones and never be separated. But in the end, he did nothing, let go of Melodia, and left the nameless sea without looking back. Melodia watched Kalin disappear into the distance. She had thought she wouldn't feel anything about this brief separation. But as soon as Kalin's figure vanished, a feeling of longing silently filled her chest. She leaped into the sea and swam with all her might in the direction Kalin had gone, a dragon flying in the sky, a mermaid swimming in the water. Melodia followed him all the way to the border of the nameless sea before surfacing. Seeing Kalin's true form soaring in the sky, with half of his scales yet to grow back, her eyes couldn't help but redden. "Kalin, I'll wait for you to take me home," Melodia whispered. She waited until the dragon clan had completely disappeared before preparing to return to the golden clam. As soon as she turned around, she ran into Ethan Sterling again. Ethan had seen her chasing after Kalin and had hurried to follow. He hadn't expected to witness her reluctant farewell to Kalin, and this should have belonged to him if he hadn't left without a word 5 years ago. She would have stood at the city gate like this, watching him leave with longing, right? They would be living a happy life together in the Sterling Manor now, but there were no ifs. Ethan suppressed the turmoil in his heart. "Melody, I've composed a new piece. Would you like to hear it?" Melodia ignored him and swam back. She was a mermaid. She had an excellent talent for music. So in the past, her and Ethan's most common pastime was him playing the zither and her singing. That time was indeed pleasant, but it was 5 years ago. Thinking back now, she no longer felt the same excitement. So Ethan followed her back. He had only been a mermaid for 2 days and was already exhausted from swimming for so long. It was impossible for him to keep up now, but he still gritted his teeth and persisted, just like the whipped Melodia that day. Finally, halfway there, he couldn't hold on any longer and fainted. Melodia didn't want to bother, but this area of the sea had undercurrents that could easily pull things into the abyss. The abyss was full of ferocious beasts. Even someone with her strength would be exhausted after a trip there. An inexperienced and unconscious Ethan going in would just become food for the beasts. Ethan had, after all, saved her life once. Melodia sighed and ended up saving Ethan. Ethan was unconscious for 3 days. When he woke up, he saw Melodia polishing something, and a warmth spread through his heart. As expected, she still cared about him. Melodia heard the movement and looked up. Ethan was about to thank her, but Melodia spoke first. "You should go back. You don't belong in the nameless sea. The human world is your home." Ethan's heart skipped a beat, and he instantly understood what she meant. "Is it really impossible for us? A human's life is too short. I came back to the manor with you with the courage to love for 100 years and be lonely for a lifetime. But you missed all your chances." Melodia reminded him softly. "Now that I have a lover who can be with me for hundreds, even thousands of years, what makes you think I would risk it all again to gamble on another 10 years with you?" Ethan was speechless. He could only stare at Melodia blankly. Melodia smiled gently at him. "Wish me happiness, Ethan Sterling." Chapter 22, on the day of the blessing ceremony, Kalin returned to the nameless sea. As soon as he landed, he saw Ethan Sterling sitting on the golden clam, tuning a zither. His heart immediately sank. Ethan looked up at Kalin's bitter expression. He didn't understand why Kalin, who had won Melodia's heart, could still look like this. Jealousy, anger, and unwillingness flooded his heart. He deliberately reminded Kalin, "Melody has gone to the palace and won't be back until tonight. If the crown prince has nothing to do, please don't disturb my tuning. Melody listens to my zither music to fall asleep every night." Kalin's footsteps faltered. "What are you trying to say?" Ethan smiled. "I have loved Melody for 10 years. You have only appeared for 2 months. Do you really think she would abandon me for you? She is just tired of the scheming in the human world and wants me to stay in the nameless sea with her." "So?" Kalin knew he shouldn't believe him, but he had gone to the human world time and time again and had seen how deeply she loved Ethan. The evidence was irrefutable. He had no choice but to believe it. The pain spread through his heart little by little. He subconsciously wanted to leave. But Ethan added, "If you don't believe me, let's make a bet," Kalin said in a deep voice. "I will never use her as a bargaining chip." Ethan didn't want to hear this declaration of love. He continued bluntly, "When Melody sees you, she will give you a gift and ask you for something in return. Do you dare to give it to her? What is it?" Kalin knew what it was, but he still couldn't help but ask. "A dragon's reverse scale." Ethan smiled lightly. His eyes were full of contempt as he looked at Kalin. He could give up the Sterling Manor for Melody, give up his human identity, even give up his life. But this noble dragon prince, who wanted to be with Melody forever, what was he willing to sacrifice for her? Kalin clenched his fists tightly. Even though he was prepared, he was still overwhelmed by the sudden burst of pain. A mere reverse scale. If she asks for it, why would I not dare? With that, Kalin strode away. Ethan didn't believe him. He sneered and was about to continue tuning his zither. Suddenly, a string broke, instantly cutting his palm. He was not a real mermaid. Every time he was injured in the nameless sea, he would suffer excruciating pain. Just like Melodia being caught in the rain in the human world. This was the price for a human to stay in the nameless sea. Ethan clenched his fist, his whole body trembling with pain. At that moment, he finally knew how much pain Melodia had endured. Just then, Melodia, dressed in a magnificent gown, ran back in a hurry. Ethan thought she still cared and was about to comfort her by saying he was fine. But she blurted out, "Where's Kalin?" "He left," Ethan replied. "Where did he go?" Ethan pointed in a random direction. Melodia frowned, turned, and jumped into the sea, swimming in that direction. Ethan stood there, stunned. After a long time, he sighed. "I lost. Not to Kalin, but to Melodia." Now, Melodia's eyes and heart were no longer for him. Melodia searched for 3 days. She finally found a very drunk Kalin in a small cave on the Isle of Glass. Seeing her, Kalin stood up dazedly and hugged her tightly. "Melody, I miss you so much. Why can't you just look at me? I can do anything he can do, and I can do things he can't. What am I not as good as him?" "I don't care. I'm not giving you up your mine. You're drunk," Melodia said, exasperated. It would have been so much better if he had said these things when he was sober. Kalin clung to Melodia. "Don't you have something for me?" Melodia was surprised. She had gone to the abyss that day to collect spirit stones and kill beasts, all to make him a bone flute as a spiritual weapon. But the item had only been polished in the last 2 days. How did he know? "I do." Melodia flipped her hand, and a bone flute appeared. "I made this specially for you. It can save your life at a critical moment." "I like it." Kalin smiled foolishly and took the bone flute. He looked at it lovingly for a long time before his eyes turned red. "Then I have a gift for you too." With that, he took the bone flute and began to cast a spell. Melodia saw that something was wrong and immediately knocked the bone flute away. She was hit by the powerful spell's backlash, took several steps back, clutched her chest, and coughed up several mouthfuls of blood. The blood stung Kalin's eyes. His consciousness instantly returned, and he rushed forward to help Melodia up. Melodia guessed the truth. "What nonsense did Ethan Sterling tell you?" Kalin shook his head and said nothing. Melodia's face instantly darkened. "You think I gave you things and was nice to you just to get your reverse scale for Ethan Sterling? I've seen how you loved him. I don't know how to win against 10 years with just 2 months." Kalin's eyes turned red. "Why didn't you ask me what I thought?" Melodia was frustrated. Kalin took a deep breath. "Because I love you and I don't want to lose you. So as long as I can keep you, I'm willing to do anything, even if you want my reverse scale, I can." "Idiot," Melodia threw herself at Kalin and pushed him down. "Ethan Sterling is already in the past. Now, all I want is you, my husband, Kalin." Chapter 23, another half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Ethan Sterling played his zither day after day. Melodia sang every night, but not once was it for him. On the last day, Melodia appeared again, with the high-spirited Kalin by her side. Kalin held Melodia and looked down at Ethan. "Melody and I will see you off." Ethan shook his head. "No need. From now on, we will truly never see each other again. I wish you happiness." Melodia smiled and said goodbye to him. Her tone was exceptionally calm. But every time she looked up and met Kalin's eyes, the sweetness that inadvertently flowed out still stung Ethan's eyes. Ethan smiled back. "As long as you're happy." His smile held a desperate determination. Melodia had nothing more to say. She took Kalin's hand and walked back. In a few hours, they would be leaving for the Dragon Sea. They still had to attend a farewell ceremony. In the years to come, she probably wouldn't return to the nameless sea. Melodia and Kalin left, talking and laughing. Ethan watched them all the way. He didn't know how long it had been, but he looked up at the bright moon in the sky. It was about time. "Melody, I will always be with you," Ethan whispered softly. The next moment, his body suddenly exploded, instantly turning into foam and merging with the nameless sea. The waves surged, rushing towards Melodia's home, but the place was already empty, and high above the 9 heavens. Melodia sat on Kalin's true form, flying towards the Dragon Sea. The nameless sea grew smaller and smaller. Finally, it was just a small dot. As they flew, Kalin suddenly asked, "If he hadn't left, would you regret it?" "That was his choice." Melodia swung her fishtail nonchalantly. "And my choice is you." "Then, I want to know, how did I win?" Before Kalin could finish his sentence, a flock of cranes had surrounded them. The leading crane reprimanded them harshly. "Kalin, you stole my marriage. Today I demand justice. Below is Mount Baju. You have my dragon scale and can enter freely. It's safe there." Kalin reminded Melodia. "So, are you going to stay and fight with your husband, or go to a safe place to take shelter?" Melodia's heart stirred. "Where you are, I am." Kalin laughed heartily. "Good, hold on tight to your husband at worst. We'll share a blanket in life and a tomb in death." This was just an excuse. Kalin was the war god of the dragon clan. Even with a reduction of 700 years of power, half of his dragon scales, and a dragon bone, he was not someone the mere crane clan could kill. With a dragon's leap and a tiger's pounce, Melodia leaned down and hugged him tightly, answering softly. "This is the reason. In your heart, I am your weakness born of love, yet I can still fight alongside you. What you give me is never just favoritism and sincerity, but also respect and choice. I love you, Kalin. This will be the best choice I have ever made in my life." Her voice faded into the sky. The sun rose as usual. The foam of the nameless sea rose and fell, but the mermaid princess would never return. The end. Chapter 24. I am the crown prince of the dragon clan. After experiencing tens of thousands of years of demonic wars, my heart had grown as cold as ice. I thought this was how my life would be. Unexpectedly, over 100 years ago, I fell in love with the mermaid princess, Melodia. At that time, I was injured and accidentally entered the nameless sea. I was attracted by her melodious singing and fell in love with her at first sight. I knew that mermaids were kind. I also knew that mermaid blood had a miraculous effect on dragons. So, I deliberately transformed into a small dragon and fell before her. As expected, she saved me. She even fed me her blood with her mouth. She teased me softly, telling me to come and marry her. I silently agreed in my heart. After returning to the dragon clan, I worked even harder to quell the demonic disputes, all so that I could spend the rest of my life with my mermaid princess. After 100 years, the demonic disputes finally came to an end. I hurried to the nameless sea. My mind was full of thoughts that my mermaid princess must have grown up. Unexpectedly, my little mermaid had fallen in love with a human and had even stayed in the human world for him. I secretly transformed and sneaked into the human world to see her. My little mermaid had indeed grown up. She was even more captivating than when I first saw her. Her singing had also become more moving because of her love. She was always smiling happily when she was with that person. A sour feeling rose in my heart, but it didn't matter. A human's lifespan is so short. That human would eventually die. My mermaid princess would eventually return to the nameless sea. I had already waited 100 years. What was another 100? From then on, I often transformed to see her. For the first 5 years, she was so happy. Even a blooming flower could make her smile as brightly as the spring sun. But after that day, everything changed. That human actually ignored her true feelings. Seeing her crying her eyes out, I felt for the first time that waiting might have been a mistake. I wanted to take the initiative. But she loved that man so much, how could I erase him from her heart? For the first time in my life, I had the thought of killing someone. But just the thought of her tear-streaked face was unbearable. It doesn't matter, life is short. I could only comfort myself with this. I waited quietly with my mermaid princess in a place no one knew. She waited for him to return, waited for his answer. And I waited for her to let go, waited for her to come home. But 5 years passed in the blink of an eye. What she waited for was his return with another woman. What I waited for was the news that the mermaid clan was to form a marriage alliance with the crane clan. So, I devised a plan to replace the marriage contract. And she finally decided to let go and agreed to the marriage. My mermaid princess returned. I was so happy that I lit the celestial fire for her for 49 days. From now on, I could stand by her side openly. What were 700 years of power? While she was drunk, I deliberately approached her. She spoke of the fireworks and yachts of the human world, and I knew that man's shadow still lingered in her heart. I decided to use new fireworks and yachts to wash away that mark. Actually, I had started making fireworks and yachts for her 5 years ago. But to pretend they were bought from the human world, I still took her mermaid servant, Pearl, on a trip there. But I regretted it. Especially when I learned that the human had gone mad for her and was searching for a way into the nameless sea. Pearl would tell her. I knew it in my heart, so I hurried to get my scales and make a wedding dress. The process was extremely painful, but when I thought of how she had been caught in the rain for 2 days because of that man, when I went to change the marriage contract, nearly dying, what pain could I not endure? She could not love me. But it absolutely could not be that man, because he was not worthy no matter what his excuses were. From the moment he decided to solve the problem by hurting her, he was not worthy of her love. The wedding dress worked. Although I had lost half of my scales, it was not a fundamental injury. But knowing that my little mermaid was eavesdropping on my conversation with the guard, I couldn't help but feign illness. My little mermaid fell for it. She saved me in the same way. Only this time, I wasn't going to let her go. Soon, our wedding day arrived. I presented the carefully prepared fireworks and yacht. As I wished, I heard the words of love I wanted from my little mermaid. And there was even an unexpected surprise. My mermaid princess had actually used her own scales to make me a necklace. My heart ached for her, but I didn't advise her against it because she was free. I carefully stored the necklace away, silently reminding myself to always do my best to give her what she wanted. But the yacht was tainted. For the first time, fear rose in my heart. I was afraid that the little bit of love I had managed to cultivate in my little mermaid would dissipate, that the shattered pieces of her heart I had painstakingly put back together would break again. For the first time in front of my little mermaid, I showed a cold and stern side, turning the yacht to ashes. Unexpectedly, it was a blessing in disguise. It earned me my little mermaid's initiative on our wedding night. I naturally wouldn't let her go. Soon, that human appeared in the nameless sea, explaining all the past misunderstandings to her. I clenched my fists nervously. I was afraid she would have a change of heart, so I quickly took a dragon bone and made a ring. When I went to give it to her, I heard Pearl say that only a dragon's reverse scale could allow a human to freely enter and exit the nameless sea. She didn't refute it. It seemed she intended to take my reverse scale. If she wanted it, I would take it myself and give it to her as a toy. But to give it to that man, no, so I used the excuse of having something to do and left the nameless sea with all the dragons. When I returned, the man provoked me. I knew he was provoking me, so I deliberately leaked the news of my return to my little mermaid and then left. My princess always has the right to choose. But now, it was time to choose. In the end, my mermaid princess chose me. That man lost. His love was destined to become foam. And I, step by step, calculated until this point. It wasn't until she knocked away the bone flute, preventing me from taking my reverse scale, that I truly felt how passionate and pure my little mermaid's love was. At that moment, I made up my mind. From now on, between her and me, there would be no more calculations, only love and sincerity. And she would never know any of this. Epilogue end.